everyone. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker Training. I'm Richard Carlton, creator of FMTrain.tv, where every day is a fun day, a great day to learn about the Claris FileMaker platform. With that in mind, Margaret, why don't we take a quick look at our upcoming broadcast schedule, which we see right here today, tomorrow, through the end of the week. We're going to be doing FileMaker Server deployments. I'm going to kind of reframe this conversation a little bit to make sure we're all on board with what we are doing. Let me remind all of you that the live stream seems to be free, but it does cost real money to put this together. If you go to FMTrain.tv, you can scroll down the page. You can see these bundles right here. Purchasing a bundle is a way of supporting the channel. We greatly appreciate all of you. A bunch of you yesterday pushed the button, at least pick the level you want, but the minimum level is great. And you're going to get things for this from this. That being said, this is how we pay the bills and keep the lights on, right? Very, very, very important. Okay, so this is the conversation. So we have 5 days of basically FileMaker Server. And most of the time with FileMaker Server, we kind of gloss over stuff. This is actually us screwing it together in a very serious sort of way. For us to do that, I can help kind of babysit the conversation a little bit, but largely this becomes a Jacob Taylor conversation, right? So what we are doing is we're talking about FileMaker Server in use with Amazon. Okay, now we're going to get to a spot, not today. I don't even know if that's tomorrow, but at some point this week, we're going to be doing an install of FileMaker Server on Windows and FileMaker Server on Linux. Those could be on premise if you want to have that conversation or install them on your own computer. However, today we're going to build the actual Amazon servers. So, you go to Amazon, you say, I want a server. Right. Well, they did that. Yeah, they don't respond well to that. You have to go in there and tell them what kind of server you want, pick the operating system, all this sort of stuff. It spins it up. So let's talk about terminology on that real quick. AWS services. So this is why we like them. They have outlasted a lot of other companies. And so as a result, these folks here are really the definitive place for data center storage and renting slices of a server. The whole idea is we're not buying our own server. Amazon already bought a giant refrigerator-sized server. We're going to rent a slice of that server, or at least subscribe to a slice of it. Rent is a word that the tech people don't use, but really that's kind of what it is. It's like it's a monthly or daily subscription. But most of us do it, a year at a time kind of thing to get the price discount. So we'll talk about that a little bit. So yesterday was a conversation. I'm going to get to that momentarily. I want to talk about terminology real quick. So everyone's caught up. S3, if you hear their word S3, that's Amazon's file server in the sky, AKA an FTP server. It works slightly different, but that's essentially what it is, where you park files and then you can access them or whatever you want to do. EC2 is the name of the virtualized hardware service at Amazon. So we're gonna log into Amazon's data in their web interface. Then we're gonna say go to EC2 area of the system and say build us a new server. But they don't call it a server; they call it an instance. I think it's an instance of a server, but they just kind of chopped it down to the word server, right? And so it's a virtual server. So most of you have a FileMaker server if it's on Amazon. It is an instance. If you have 3 FileMaker servers, most likely, in 95% of the cases, you'll have 3 instances that go with that, right? Whoa, how much RAM and hard drive and stuff on the instance? We briefly talked about that yesterday. You're going to actually see that happen today. So instead of you buying a computer and specifying the RAM and hard drive and all this sort of stuff, you're going to do the same thing with the instance, and you're going to pick it. Then you press the button. Amazon will, behind the scenes, magically spin it up for you, and then ding, it's like almost like a toaster popping up with your toast, the little pop, and up comes the server magically. That's how that works. It's pretty great like that. If you hear the term security group, that's a reference to a firewall that we will probably see that briefly at some point. If you see the word volume, that's not an Amazon exclusive conversation, but that is for those of you on a hard drive. So you would have a volume or multiple volumes on your FileMaker server. Yesterday, we talked a little bit about networks. Network packet. A network packet is a block of text. Like literally, if you went into Microsoft Word and copied a block of text, and you just put like in a text file, you shoot that across the internet, that's a packet, okay? The packet theoretically would go at the speed of light, but it gets slowed down. That slowdown is called latency, okay? The other part that is in here I hadn't got to yet, which is called packet loss. That's where the block of text, it dies and it goes in one side and out the other, and it never comes out the other side. It's like it just, where'd it go? I don't know. It died. It went away. And so if you have 5% packet loss. That's not good. Somewhere between 5 and 10% FileMaker starts chugging. Because every time you miss a packet, the computers and systems involved go, hey, because they're keeping track of the packet. You got packet 1, yes. Packet 2, yes. Packet 3, yes. Packet 4. Packet 5 got 5, but 4 wasn't there. So it has to go time out, send me 4 again. So it's a retry. And the whole thing just, it was like if I'm driving on the freeway and I just hit the brakes randomly hard just for a half a second, everyone's getting thrown around the seats in the car. That's exactly what packet loss is. It jerks the computer around. You don't see the jerkiness, but you're like, hey, why isn't FileMaker working? Well, either you suck as a FileMaker developer and you need to make it more efficient, which could be. That's why you come to our live training. A bunch of you are here. Thank you for coming here, making this great training for everyone. I don't know everything, but I can tell you when it's slow and it sucks, and we can work on it together. So basically latency and packet loss are things you need to think about from that side of point. Okay. And so the conversation today, for some of you, if somebody asks questions, Margaret and I are going to help regulate the questions, but the questions are mostly for people who don't have a FileMaker server, or maybe they have an internal one. We talked about the decision making, whether you want internal one or external one. I'm not going to really revisit that with Jacob. It's a waste of his time. We could have yesterday's recording that should be coming out hopefully fairly quickly. But the conversation is, there's reasons to do it internally. There's also good reasons to do it on Amazon. Almost all of our RCC servers are on Amazon. I personally have one on a Mac that I personally run because I personally want the experience of playing with it. And a lot of FileMaker developers just farm it out, don't worry about it, and they don't know about server. I mean, they know how to make it perform well generally in terms of coding FileMaker, but in terms of them setting it up and doing stuff with it, even RCC servers, most of the engineers are just like, we put it there, it works. If it doesn't work, we call Jacob. I mean, that's how that rolls. And so that may or may not be a good attitude for you. With that in mind, yesterday's conversation was this big overarching picture of, why Amazon and do we do it in-house and this, that, and the other thing. So now we have decided that we don't want to run it in the office. Maybe you've hired Jacob to help you, and we're not telling you to do this. We're showing you what he does. If you hire him, we're showing you what he does. He does it really fast, far faster than what we can do it here on the show. But this is what he does. So this is the inside secret sauce of Jacob Taylor. So Mr. Taylor, if you want to, I'm going to stop sharing. If you want to jump in. So everyone on the left, S3 is what? The file server or an FTP server. EC2 is the serve. You know this, Jay. I know everyone else said that. And so EC2 is where the virtual servers are generated from. It's where they live, that kind of thing, right? Yep. So, yeah. All right. So what are we doing today? There we are.
We're gonna set up a server.
Okay. So
I meant to go to the homepage and go back to that. So anyway,
can you
the
log
manual?
Yeah. Where does the login for this even? You already pre-logged in.
I'm already logged in. Yeah.
Okay.
In general, you're going to land basically here, except if it's a fresh account, it's not going to have recently visited because you will not have recently visited anything.
So to find it, you would go and you would type up there at the top, EC2.
It's the little thing. This is their flyout menu. They have, I don't know, 1,000 services or something. You will also not have recently visited in this dropdown that I could use to click. So you're going to go EC2.
You just type it up there.
I'm sorry.
EC2. There you go.
And so there's a few different things that are available to you.
Okay.
This one's actually brand new, but.
Okay. So let's do the top one. The image builders, when you're building a brand new server with a brand new operating system configured to your own specification. It's not what most of you are ever going to do, right? So yeah. Okay.
It can be helpful if you get to the stage of mass FileMaker server deployments.
Yeah.
Like you need lots of them.
You have 20 or 30 or 40 servers. Yeah. Then you'd build one image and then you tell it to build you a new server, build a new instance from that image. So it just like duplicates and you don't have to redo the work, which is what we do a lot of times at RCC. Yep. So, okay. So here we go. So we're on EC2.
We're gonna click EC2.
And then
nothing.
Okay. Down below, instance is running 0. So we don't have anything going.
We have nothing going. Yeah.
So how do we build a new one?
We're going to make a new one here. We're going to go, how do I do launch one? Go to instances launch, big orange button here.
Orange launch instances. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So we need to name it RCC FileMaker Server. Okay.
Naming doesn't matter too much.
Okay.
This is a friendly name, as always, domains, blah, 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 but it's a friendly name. So name it something useful that makes sense. it doesn't go anywhere else. It's just for when you come in here. If you have one server, it's going to be obvious what the thing is. If you have 25, it becomes critical that you name them, because otherwise you're like, what the heck is this thing? I don't know what it's doing. What am I paying for?
Yeah.
Be careful to find yourself in that situation. So it's good to
Okay.
just name stuff.
Good. So then well, we have a couple things. So this is the operating system selection, right? So
Yep.
there, and
Yeah.
then
And so if you want, that's engineering blog. If you go to Ubuntu, so we're going to look at, I'm on the 2024 current release of FileMaker Server tech specs page. That's your key search term if you're Googling for this stuff. Tech specs is the term that Claris uses for this. So we'll go to FileMaker Server. We'll say, okay, Mac OS no, Windows no. We're going to do Ubuntu today. Okay, so we have like 4 options here of like operating systems that we could pick. These are all Ubuntu. The only thing that really differs between them is like desktop versus server, which is just is what I mentioned on day one. There's an option where you can have a desktop environment where you click around on the server. There's
is that
reasons not to do that.
doable? You would recommend not doing that.
I recommend against it. Yeah, it's also additional setup for getting the screen share into the server.
Okay.
However, the reason I note it is because on-site customers will almost guaranteed, if they're not doing literally a command line install like this, they will probably have a desktop environment. It's also why Claris specifies, yes, it's in general supported.
Okay.
The 2 real options that you're actually looking at here are basically the 2 most recent versions of Ubuntu long-term support. You'll know, those of you who are informed about these things will note there's one newer version that exists as of last month, I think. That will be supported in the next version of FileMaker Server that comes out. There's 2004, which is literally 2020, 4th month. 2204, 2022, 4th month, and then the next one will be 2024, 4th month, and then a year ago, last month, sorry, not this year, it's 2025, my bad.
So this will be supported. The 2404 would be supported with the next release of FileMaker Server.
Yeah, when the next release of FileMaker Server comes out, correct.
So for those of you real quick, so these are the long-term support, which means the ones that the Ubuntu people will support. There are versions, it says 04. There is an 01, 02, 03. You're not seeing those here, right? Claire says you want the long-term support one, right? That way, if there's a security problem or something, they will fix it. If you're on 22.02 or something like that, and there's a big security problem here, they may not fix it, right? You need to be on the 04, which is like April, right?
They do releases like that, a bit short version of Ubuntu release schedule. Every 2 years, hence the 20, 22, 24. Every 2 years they do a long-term support. Those are 5 or 10 years supported. They're very long-term. But they also put out a regular release every 6 months. Those only have like 9 months support though. So you have to be upgrading all the time first. Second, Claris doesn't even claim to support any of those. I would, on a server, avoid them in general. Canonical, which is who makes Ubuntu, that's the company, they tend to beta test things in those interim non-LTS releases. So it doesn't mean it's a problem or anything like that. If you weren't in FileMaker or the context of something else, you might actually intentionally try for those releases sometimes just to test stuff, but doesn't apply here. Don't worry about it. If you're doing a server, today I'm going to put you on 2204, and that's what we're going to demonstrate today. Yeah, that's what we're going to demonstrate today.
Perfect.
And then if you're on site, I would probably say the same thing until we'll just call it FileMaker 22 comes out, or whatever they're going to call it once it's out. The next version is 21 right now. But yeah, so the next version of FileMaker Server is expected to support the next Ubuntu LTS release. And so at that point, if you want the latest version, we'll start recommending those versions together, et cetera.
Yep. Okay, so let's continue on. So we've selected Ubuntu. Now what are we going to select?
So we've picked Ubuntu. We actually can't do this one. It defaults to the most recent LTS.
Yeah, we don't want that one.
We're going to pick one step back. So we have 20, and then actually you can scroll back and confirm. What is it doing? Oh, I see. Okay, cool, sure. It's changing the hard drive. It's like they've started pre-filling some of the details for you. We're going to adjust almost everything on this page just so everyone's clear. other one, and I want to do this for our demo tomorrow. We're going to launch an ARM server. And I want to talk about that for a short time. So historically, most people are familiar with x86. That is Intel or AMD. If you have any familiarity with computers, you've at least heard of those names somewhere.
Sure.
More recently, although not that recently now, at least 5 years ago these days, Apple has released the M series chips for those of you who are Mac users. If you've got any kind of an iPhone, those have always been on chips like that. Also, if you're on Android, for example, you have a mobile phone like that, those are all of those different things. They're different variations, but they're all ARM chips, which are not x86. The hardcore hardware level details don't matter too much, at least for this. However, they can't be incompatible with each other. Claris builds us copies of FileMaker Server that run on one or the other. And so just be careful to pick the correct one when you're doing this. You'll get some really funny errors if you say try and install an AMD or Intel FileMaker Server version on an ARM FileMaker Server. It'll give you some pretty hilarious errors. So
okay, let me read something you said that was just I maybe I misunderstood it, but I'm just going to restate it. So
sure.
when you get FileMaker Server, it'll be compatible with, you'll have one for x86. There'll be a separate installation for ARM, and then there'll be probably a separate installation for Mac. Is that, or is that, or do
there's one that covers all Windows, and that's because all the Windows are x86. I'm going to ignore the ARM versions of that.
Okay.
Because it doesn't matter here. There's a universal one for Mac, which is the same, can run on the current supported Intels, I think, but runs on both basically. If you ever download one of those, you'll see that they're quite a bit larger than the others. It's because they contain both copies. It's one big blob. For the Linux downloads, there are, I think, 4 variations actually, and those match to the 2004 and 2204 Ubuntu's, and then split again on Intel and ARM. Okay. Intel is Intel and AMD in this case. Sorry. Covers both.
Well, let's finish up with the ARM. So we're doing a Linux install today. Is that, or with this one?
Yeah, we're not doing the Linux install today, but I'm pre-selecting so that we
that's right where you dropped off.
We want to do tomorrow.
I was asking. So we're going to have this server we're building will run FileMaker Linux on it. Is the plan?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah,
okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, and then we selected ARM for this one, or is this?
We are. Yep.
Okay, so it's.
I want to demo it because it's so. Short answer is yes.
Sure, that's fine.
The part of the reason, and it's the differences for most clients don't really matter. And that's why I said, like, under the hood at the processor level and this kind of stuff, we don't really care. Just don't mess up picking the wrong one or trying to install the wrong version of FileMaker Server. Like, that's for people that aren't trying to learn all this stuff at 10,000 feet depth or whatever, all the way down. Like, just not picking the wrong stuff or mismatching things is the important thing to learn here. However, there's a couple upsides. One, if you deploy on an ARM server on Amazon, those are Amazon's own ARM processors. As a result, they are reasonably performant and at this point pretty good, pretty fast. They're also cheaper by at least 10%. I should probably know that number off the top of my head, but it's a decent additional amount of savings over the fact we had a short conversation yesterday where you when you're doing a Linux server, you don't have to pay Windows licensing. That's the short version. And so you really only are paying for, the services themselves and we'll say the little Amazon roundup so that they make their profit off of it.
Yeah. And historically, we would have used x86 processors historically, right? So then we have to write a check to Intel, and then AMD went after Intel to make sure, we always know that's why AMD is there, because Intel was, ringing the register, making, people thought that they were charging too much and it gave room for AMD to come in. Okay, fine. So then we have AMD or Intel. ARM essentially becomes a third competitor into that space. It's a consortium of companies. Apple's one of the companies. I don't know if Amazon's part of that or not, but Amazon bought in enough that they got the plans for ARM and they cooked their own ARM processors, which they call Gravitrons, right? Is that what we call them?
Yep.
Graviton.
Yep.
So we're not paying Microsoft, we're not paying Intel, we're not paying AMD. The operating system is basically free, and we're using Amazon's own chips that they, basically built their own servers with their own
Yep.
chips. Then that's about as cheap as it can get on a virtual server, at least from
Yeah,
Amazon.
and one of the big differences is like when you buy an AMD or an Intel, like even with the competition between those, you're buying a processor, a CPU, or 10,000 of them or whatever if you're Amazon or something like this. Um, with ARM, like you can buy from a direct vendor. You can't buy Graviton, but like Qualcomm, which makes a lot of phone processors, like you can do the same thing with them. You can go to Qualcomm. They have their own variants, their own versions of ARM processors that they sell on the market. If you're somebody like Amazon, though, at some point it makes sense to go buy the plans for an ARM
Yes.
processor,
Yeah.
customize it per your own details and interests, operational requirements, whatever. There's a lot that goes into that I won't talk about here. And then you go and have one of these chip fabrication facilities make processors for you. Um,
And
that's
that's what
what
Amazon
Amazon has done.
did.
Correct.
Okay, great. All right, let's
Yep.
keep pushing along here. So we're scrolling
Yep.
down.
Yeah. So we're on Ubuntu
Yep.
22.04. We're gonna pick we're gonna change to ARM.
Yep.
It might ask me a question here. It's not gonna, is it asking me a question? No, it's not. All
No,
right,
it went.
64-bit
That's
ARM.
cool.
Perfect.
Okay, great.
It
Scroll
reselected
down.
our,
Mm-hmm.
yep. I'm just double checking everything because it used to not update and it would just yell at you.
Okay, scroll down. So then
So
we have to pick how big of a server do we want, right? That's that
correct.
conversation. How much processor, how much RAM, how much hard drive. All right, so what do we now?
So
Nano is like
too
very
small.
tiny. It's like a
Half a gigabyte of RAM. You have violated Claris technical requirements.
you
Also,
violated common sense. Yeah, that's beyond
yeah,
dumb.
also
So
it's just not enough. Like we used to run mediums, like they have 4 gigs of RAM. Technically, you're supposed to have 8. One, don't do that anymore. But two, that 4 was actually small. You could fit it. It was okay. I'm not saying it was good. If you have a lot of users, it's absolutely not going to work. But
it sounds like what
um,
you'd have on a watch or something. All right, so we'll click the little
yeah,
thingy. What's
a
our
little development machine with a couple
yeah,
of people, you'll be fine.
click.
But we're not going to do that
No,
anymore.
no, no, no. Okay,
Nope.
so you're going fast. Start at the top. So it was nano, then it was
Micro.
micro,
You
still
got
too
nano,
small,
micro, small,
small.
2 gigabytes of
Okay,
RAM,
some of you
medium
remember the
4.
mediums. They were
The
medium. We used
larges is what
yep,
we usually talk about. Yep.
the minimum. Yeah, right there. Okay.
Yeah, that's the legit minimum. You can't really do less than that. That meets the memory requirements for FileMaker Server. They still recommend a quad core, so like theoretically you should be starting here.
Okay.
Um,
Hold for a second right here. Just take a look at one little thing here, everyone. So this is how Amazon does their billing over here. For those of you wondering about this, so if Jacob doesn't move, don't move.
Hold
Is that
on.
you'll see
I'm
the
trying to get both of
price?
them.
You'll see this one right here, and you'll see this price right here. So just notice that they're not saying per month or per year, which is a way we would prefer to do it. This is like a commodity. It's like selling and buying stocks. These guys check this in like microseconds or however they sell it. But what you want to notice is that between this one here and this one here, double the RAM, double the CPUs, double the price right there. Now, 0.08 cents per hour. I don't even know how that translates into a month. How many seconds in a month kind of or hours in a month? I don't know, 24 times 30 or whatever. So
They bill as a default 720 is
okay.
their number, and I forget how many days that is. But
Oh, 720 hours a month. Is that what they're okay?
yeah, that's like the standard.
Okay. So anyway, so I just wanted you to notice that and notice that so we can keep and he could go down further and it could even be more beef, right? Just for fun. Let's go
Yep.
down one more. And I'll get rid of my notes here, but interesting, eh? Right. So then you see 30, 32. This is starting to be where if you had a serious server, you might want to think about this, right? That's
Mhm.
some more juice, right?
Yep.
And
That's
then
fairly close to what RCC has, actually.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
not
yeah.
the same. We're on a Windows, and there's some other details that are different, but
Okay.
that's fairly close to our main production server. And we
Okay.
have 20, 25 people in all the time. We have all our websites. Um, we have customers that are on similar systems that
Mm-hmm.
have, maybe it's one step up. It might be I think maybe we used to be on the X large, and I think we're like 2X large these days.
Yeah.
Basically equivalent.
Okay.
We have some customers on 2X large, and they have 100 clients 24/7.
Okay.
basically manufacturing organization I'm thinking of. So
Okay.
they run
So we're
24-hour
gonna
operations.
select the large, which is
Yep,
scroll that one right there.
that
Okay,
one.
we
Yeah,
click it.
and I'm going to talk about a quick. Is it G? Yes, it is. So this is one to note. If you want, and then it's going to give me them in an awful order. There we go. Let's look at that right there. So just hold for a second. If you, this is just a side note. If the T's, you see T4 is what we're going to do, and that's what we'll do for the demo. It's
Yep.
cheap. They are closer to like a shared server. Um, the M's are closer to a dedicated server. All the numbers look the same, 2 vCPU, 8 gigabytes of RAM, or 4 and 16, whatever.
What's the price number on that? Was that the one that was 08 on the
Yeah,
other one? Okay,
yep,
so
about 50% more expensive per.
and this is what they call a burst. They it's kind of
These are not
complicated, but
burst. Yeah,
these are
the
not. But
T's are burst.
the T's were burst, right? So
Yep,
the idea is that if you have a server, you don't beat the shit out of it all the time. The T is going to be fine. These guys here, I don't know what they run. We set up for them, but a T for them would be fine, right?
it's
The
like
big
they're on
valley.
like a T4G large. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's way more because there's three or four, three of them here intermittently, like 5, 10 times a day. I mean, it's not like people beating it out of the FileMaker server. So that's as you beat it on it more, or it's around the clock, or it's continuous. You need to think
yep.
about more
And I,
better
and I
stuff.
and I note these because for those of you who, if you get to that point, or if you have a solution that works this way, and you're thinking about lots of, say, server-side scripts, we're talking about any kind of dashboarding, charting that runs server-side, just lots of data
Hmm.
processing, big imports,
Hmm.
stuff like that, big stuff, generally speaking. Even if you don't have a ton of users, you want to prefer an instance like this, because you'll have access to all of the horsepower of the server and not most of the horsepower of the server most of the time. And just think about it that way. It's a lot more consistent performance for you.
Okay.
It's a little more expensive, yeah, but
Okay. All right. So we're going to go back to our other one and
yep.
select
And we're
our
gonna go pick the
T
large, which will be like
large.
that's
We
like the
select
default.
it.
Done. So
Okay.
T4G, got
Now
it.
what? Now
We're going to
what?
come down here. This is an Amazon thing, so you're going to need to log in over on Linux on the command line. We might demonstrate that today, but I'm going to at least
Probably.
create one.
Yeah. You need to.
Um,
This is one of those little bits of things that no one
Here's
thinks
all
is
our
important. You
tests
better
in.
save this and not
Yeah.
lose this.
So you can pick one of these. The difference between these doesn't really matter. This one's a newer format. I'm going to name this test. All of them are probably named RCC test server. Maybe I should come up with a new name.
Live stream or something. Yeah, live.
FMS 21 test. Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Okay. And then format, you can see this if you're on, say, a Mac or a Linux computer yourself, you probably want this one. If you're on a Windows, you may or may not be using this, but if you know what PuTTY is and are comfortable with it, it's a nice command line tool for Windows. You'll probably want PPK instead of format, basically. So
Okay.
I'm going to leave it at defaults, though, because I don't really care about the
So
difference.
we haven't really explained what the key pair is and
Yeah.
why does it matter? If you want to create it, that's fine. But yeah,
Yeah. Essentially, so when you think of like a classic login to a computer, you have a username and a password.
hmm
Um, Modern Linux and secure Linux doesn't do that. You don't have a password. You have a username that remains. You got to know who you're logging in as. But you actually use this key file to authenticate. And so I won't talk about the math too much, but basically it is capable of producing things that prove you are who you are. And then on the server side, there's a second file, which I could even show you if you really wanted, that will allow you in. And so if those two things don't match up, there's like an ID number basically on your key and one on the server as well. If those aren't equivalent to each other, you don't get in. Simple. So
Yeah, basically
simply,
you're flashing your badge. This is like a digital
yeah,
badge. It's
like at the
like yeah,
door, like
yeah.
one of those little the HID cards. You got to put it on the little
hmm
tag, and if you don't have the right card and you're not on the list, you get
Show me a
nothing.
badge. Here's my badge. Show me my badge number 5, and let you in. Right?
Yep.
Seriously, that's what this is. But it's at the end of the day a little tiny text file. So it's not a plastic card, but it is
Yeah.
effectively a digital badge. Oh, yeah.
And here it's making me save it. We're gonna save
Okay.
it.
Okay.
That's it. Done.
So you've saved your badge. So don't do what a lot of people do. They create the badge and they're like, I don't know what that is. Doesn't sound important. Just out of here and throw it away. And then you can't get back into the server. to administer the server. So yeah,
Yep.
no bueno.
Yeah. And on Linux, that's a problem because you don't really have. I forget if they've added any kind of a virtual console these days, but um, it's if you don't have the key in general, you can't get in. That
Yeah.
can be good. There's
The reason
situations where that makes sense. Not this one though.
Well,
So
the reason I mentioned this because I personally did that. I didn't understand years ago. I didn't understand what this was the first time. I went, I didn't really throw it away. I just didn't pay attention where I stuck it, and it was lost.
yeah.
That's something, yeah, something I would
No,
do.
I'm just saying, yeah. Okay.
So we have to do a network. This is your virtual private cloud sum number. You probably don't care too much about this. Subnet, you can see what it's doing. It's going to pick a default for me. This is what it sounds like. So you probably want a public IP address to be able to access your server. Immediately after setup, you're going to go log into it and do stuff.
Okay.
This is also notably, this is different from the Elastic IP, which we will cover. I'll show how to attach one of those and stuff like that in a moment. But the auto assigned public IP is just there's a random pool of them. It's not yours. If you reboot the system, it keeps it. But if you like shut the server down for even a minute or something, you get a fresh IP completely. And so it's kind of like having a dynamic IP at your house. If you lose power at your house, you get a new one from the ISP, that sort of thing. It's fine for a time period, but if you want a static IP, you're going to get an elastic IP, which I'll show later.
So then,
yep.
So what about security group? We're going to create a security group for.
We're going to create a security group. I'm going to leave a couple defaults, but we have to go in and customize this anyway. As you might expect, they don't have FileMaker on the list, and so for FileMaker Server later. And so we'll need to come add that.
So we're setting up the firewall, and so it doesn't know. Okay, yeah. So it doesn't. There's no checkbox. Hey, set this up for FileMaker. Yeah, the Amazon doesn't know and doesn't care. FileMaker's not big enough for them to care about that. Okay, got it.
Yep. And if you're and I'll talk about this just very short. If you're say at your office or at your house where you're, we'll say generally going to be accessing the FileMaker server for administrative purposes, this is again only admin access. It's not FileMaker Server, any of the other services that we're going to offer later. This can be helpful to lock down who can access. We have a static IP at this office, so I'm just going to put my IP. I'm locking Richard out. Richard, you're locked out. But you can do that yourself also. And what this means is that unless they are, sitting at your keyboard next to you in your office, whatever, close by, basically, they're not going to be able to even talk to the secure access facilities on the server at all. They can't even try to contact it. Amazon drops the stuff at the edge, so dumps it on the floor.
Perfect.
I'm going to do these two. That sounds great. I like that. Those are just pre-set up, and I'll talk about those in a minute. But they're for if you do WebDirect, container data, I don't know, data API, any of this stuff. Admin API these days. Admin API.
Just real quick, Dave Angel asks if there's other customization of the blacklist or whitelist or things like that. I will simply say, without us getting into it, that it's Amazon. It's super flexible as to how you block and allow.
There's all you can customize security groups to your heart's content. We're gonna mostly just add a couple holes here for FileMaker Server, the port 5003 and stuff later. But you can do stuff like that. This is a big one. It's not that big, but it's a big one. Couple notes. One, 8 gigs is too small, almost for anybody. FileMaker Server installed alone is a gigabyte. You want another couple gigs for Linux. Linux is pretty small compared to Windows and things, but it's not 0. I'm going to do 100 gigabyte just for a nice, starter system. The other thing that is absolutely worth talking about is they default you to these GP2 SSDs. You want GP3. Always change that. You can also, as you see here, there's IOPS SSDs. You can also pay for additional wild levels of performance if you would like to. IO2 is very fast. It is also very expensive. So most of our customers can easily get by with GP3, and some of them that have higher performance requirements, they throw a few extra dollars at it per month. I'll put it that way simply. And so you can get higher IOPS, or the input output operations per second. That's how many times you can do things with the volume, the hard drive per second. And there's also, you can pay for additional megabytes per second as like a top speed when you're doing a big, writing a big backup out. You got a 5 gigabyte file and you need to write 5 gigabytes out. You can turn the megabytes up. to make that go faster, basically. So
Okay, so which one was I was over here answering a question, but which one's the fast one?
GP3, you want the
Is
newer
that
one?
okay, that's a newer one.
Bigger
Okay.
number, better. Bigger number, better.
Bigger number. And
Amazon.
this provision one here is one we don't have to worry about. We don't want really.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it. I'd note them here in case you need that. They're just you'll end up talking to somebody like me or another
Mm,
Amazon or an Amazon person if you do.
okay.
They're expensive. They are, but they're what they sound like. You have guaranteed performance.
Hmm.
And that guaranteed performance level can be quite high. That's quite a high
So
ceiling.
so
So,
3 is better than 2, so we like that. But if you
yep.
really want to go super badass, you would come down here or go down here. Do we do that ourselves? We don't even
Nope.
RCC. We don't use that. So yeah.
Nope. We do GP3,
Okay.
and we turn the megabytes per second up. I don't even turn the IOPS up usually. So
Okay. Okay.
I've
Go ahead.
had
So
I've had
oh,
2 customers so far where that made sense. So
okay. Cool. All right.
we're just gonna leave that. So notable thing on Linux, unlike which we'll address when we get to Windows, we don't always and honestly don't usually do the like many multi-disks for everything. And that is because it's not needed on Linux, honestly. Um, the the Windows servers, when we set them up, you end up with like a Windows drive, a database drive, a backups drive. If you have a bunch of container data, documents and images stored externally, usually, you end up with a container data drive, like a fourth hard drive on that server. We don't need that here. There are very good reasons that I will explain at the Windows why we split it that way, but the short version is it's just not necessary on Linux. So you can use snapshot backups here, and that works fine. Let me see advanced details. I don't think we need any of this. We don't need a join directory. We don't need an instance profile. That all sounds great.
Okay, so Code to Go has a comment, says FileMaker Server wants 100 gigabytes free on the drive according to official docs.
Perfect.
Is that?
Yeah, I approve of that. That's a good number. Our we don't have alerts on our Linux servers, and we don't have too many of them, so it's not a huge issue. On our Windows servers, so 2 facts. FileMaker Server, the application, will close databases in an emergency fashion if you fall under 1 gigabyte free on like the drive that the databases are on or whatever. That's good. It generally ends up saving your databases for you, actually. It's also very disruptive because it boots you out with a quickness. You are immediately disconnected and those files are closed as fast as it can get that done. It's very surprising. Everybody hates it. Avoid that. Second, when we have alerting on our Windows servers, which I'll just address as a generality, you always, always, always want 10% free space. And I mean that as that's your emergency case. You should be working on expanding the drive or in some way dealing with that when you've hit that. On physical on-site servers, and you're doing, for example, you have an SSD for your FileMaker, your FMP12s, or for max performance or whatever. You separately from all of what I just said, never want to fall under 20% free space. Actually, don't ever exceed 80% used space on an SSD on a physical on-site server, for reasons that are how it deals because those drives wear out. We can ignore that in the cloud. It's Amazon's problem functionally. But on on-site servers, you have to manage that. And so if you get under 80 or if you get over 80% full, there's like firmware on the drives. The drive has issues rearranging data to deal with the worn out parts of the drive. You don't usually care about that and you don't run them long enough where that really becomes a problem, but you want to make sure there's a safety margin so that you're not unnecessarily making it work hard to move your data around, because if there's a bug in the firmware, it makes a mistake, you're losing data. Avoid that.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
It's bad, and you just want to not put yourself in the situation in the first place. You just buy a little extra size on the hard drive. Like it's not a big issue really. Just pay attention and don't go cheap on stuff like that. That's all.
So back to what Code to Go says. Code to Go says Claris FileMaker wants 100 gigabytes free. I don't know that I've ever. So we're going to upsize that? Is that what we're going to do here?
I think that's what they're requesting.
For
this demo, we're probably going to throw an FMSP up, and so we're going to be probably 5 gigs in total, including all the backups. With 95 gigs free at the end.
Yeah, I
So
don't get the part where it's 100 gigabytes free. I code that goes implying that's in their tech specs. I'm not sure that they have anything that big in their tech specs. Let me
we
just
could
can I go
look.
back to that. Where's the
Uh,
100
uh,
connections? Where's the no
yeah, that's what they say. No,
requires
100 or available. Yeah. So
or
don't.
more on
And
the
this is like the recommendations where people ask me for like a Mac Mini on-site server because you can get them with 128 gigs of storage on them still,
Mhm.
and that's just too small. And I tell every single customer who asks that, no, start with the 256 and think about bigger. And if you're buying hardware for 5 years, think about
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
If you think you can actually fit on that, you're probably wrong. Uh,
Mhm.
honestly, just buy the big one. Especially if you're going to write a check for a Mac or something like that, and you're going to keep it because they'll run longer than 5 years.
Yeah,
You'll run
Apple's
out of
will for
operating
sure.
system support
Yeah.
first. So
David Angel says Jacob said all the space in one volume only question marks.
yeah,
So
on Linux, yes.
okay.
It's not strictly speaking necessary to do the multi-drive thing. The situation that it makes sense to do that are one, you're doing some kind of cloud deployment thing that we're not going to demonstrate here, which is where you can swap out the operating system and like FileMaker Server. And so FileMaker Cloud does that. They have like an operating system disk and then a data drive. And so your
Mhm.
database and container data are on the data drive, and then they can swap the whole server out
Okay.
using left and right side to, you know,
Yes. But
um,
in terms of backups, right? We're writing some of the backups on this drive. Is that what we're doing?
yeah,
Right?
it'll
Okay.
be everything on one drive. Linux doesn't care about that. The hard linking works perfectly and correctly in this case, and so you don't end up with, I don't know, 60 copies of your container data or something like that. You really actually only have one.
But
Or
we're gonna look at snapshotting the question here because the
correct.
problem with one logical volume or one piece of
Yep,
hardware is that you have a single point of failure, right? So,
correct. Yep, yeah.
okay.
Um, and what was
I
the
think
other one?
that's where
Oh,
David
and
Angel's going at with that. So,
yeah, and then the other one where it can make sense to have an addition, we'll say an additional drive, is if you have a voluminous amount of container data.
yeah.
Talking a terabyte or greater, it starts making sense to just put it on its own drive, if
Okay.
nothing else for management, so you can snapshot it separately, things like that. Um,
Okay. So everyone, we're building a Linux server with a single drive.
yep,
But we're going to show you how to run the
here
backup so we're not exposed to
we'll round it up.
danger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't need to mess with any of this stuff. You can. Uh, This one's cool. Termination protection's nice. We'll turn that on. Termination protection is what it sounds like. Here's the little help. So if you turn, this is a generality, if you turn termination protection on a server and you try
Hmm.
and terminate, which means delete the server, it will
Hmm.
not let you,
Oh,
even if
okay.
it's off. The answer is no. You have to go manually turn termination protection off, and then you
Okay.
can delete the server. So keeps you from shooting yourself in the foot unnecessarily. Is the only one in here that is like, we could talk about that. Okay. The rest of these, let's see. No, I don't think any of this matters. Not for you guys. Okay, cool. All right. So summary up here on the right side. We're going to review this before we go click buttons. So we have
Hmm.
one instance. In other
So
words,
that means,
not
Margaret,
10.
how many servers do we have here, Margaret? We have what?
One.
Right.
Well, slice of one, right? I
Well, it's
don't know.
one. It
Yep.
appears to be one server to us, but it's
Yes.
probably one slice on a refrigerator size server, and there's probably 100 other slices on there all spinning around.
Yep.
So yeah. Okay. So then, yep. Then we got the operating system. Yep.
Yep, we have that. So we have our operating system. We have our size. We're going to go with the T4, which are the shared, like T3, T4.
Yeah.
And then G means G for graviton instead of
A little
nothing
cheaper.
is in, yeah,
Yep.
nothing is Intel, and A is AMD. And
Hmm.
then G for even additional savings. AMDs are 10% cheaper. Gravitons are another step. We've set up our firewall, which we're going to go customize shortly. And we've got one big hard drive here, big for
Okay.
FMSP, frankly. So we're just going to
Okay.
hit launch. And it's going to go thinking. So it's just made those resources that we told it to do. One of those, I wonder if I can show the log. Yeah, here we go. So this is what it clicked through quickly, but I'll
Hmm.
expand it for the recording. So start a server, attach or create a security group, attach the rules to the security group, and then launch the server. Yes.
Where, okay, so up here at the top, I see this, but we
Yes.
would, but when we spin up the server, we have to tell what region to stick it in, and I didn't
No.
see that. So where did?
Because we're in a region, so we launched it in the region. So if you, I'll say, need to be somewhere else because you're in Texas, Ohio's closer to you. You're somewhere in Europe. Let's say Frankfurt's the best region. You know, I see that one on screen here. Then you need to be in that region in the top right of your admin console or of your
Before you
Amazon
build the
console
server.
before
Yes.
starting this process. Correct.
So you log in as a user, and then you select part of that as you select your region in the web.
Yep.
So everything that you're doing at that point is within that. So if we're screwing around with EC2 or S3 or some other service, those are all things that are spinning out of that region, right, Mark? Does that make sense? So it's
Yeah, well, let's say if I'm in Illinois or Kentucky or somewhere, is it just going to automatically pick the one that's closest to me? Or will it default
I
to
don't
me?
you're
know. It
selecting the
might.
regions.
You should pick though.
Well,
Yeah.
Don't trust it. Don't trust the computer.
I mean, this is where if you log in, it's going to ask you what region do you want to be in. Because when you create an account, you could go to any region. We could set up a server in Mumbai, India, which we did, I don't know, a couple of years ago. So it doesn't particularly matter. But the way you specify what you're doing is right at the beginning. This whole interface as we're interacting with it, this whole interface at this current time is set up to be driving out of Northern California. Everything we do in here is Northern California, right? So then, well, I didn't want the server there. Then kill the server, switch it over here, then go build the server again. Are we clear on that, everyone? It's a little bit counterintuitive, I guess, because most of us would assume that would be a setting on the server.
You can relocate. It's half the time it's just faster to go click a few times again. So
yes, we can shoot the bear with a tranquilizer dart and relocate Yogi to the Jellystone National Park, but yes, it's a pain in the ass to trap and relocate a bear. All right, so now we have a server. We have notice that we have one instance, and then there it is here, and then we see that, and then we had that, and then it's oh, there it is.
Over here. So I'm going to give you more. Here's your and there's more columns. There's so. You can see, as we checked before, there was allocate a public IPv4 address. Okay, so we have one. Here's a whole big info panel down here too. We don't have an elastic IP. We could get one of those. We don't have an IPv6. We could have it assign one of those. We don't have the monitoring, which actually means like detailed monitoring is not enabled. This is our security group, which is lovingly named Launch Wizard, and it'll be 1, 2, 3 or something like this if you haven't done too many of those. This is the key so that in case we're searching around on our computer in a panic trying to figure out where did it go and how do I get into my server?
So just to be clear, everyone, we're logged into the Amazon control panel and we can see this server. We are not administering this server right now. To administer the server, this is a server name. We have to have our badge, our key, our ID badge for that specific server before we can get in. Okay, just so we're clear on that. Sorry, Jacob, I just
no, you're good. And then there's all kinds of stuff down here.
So how do we well, this isn't Windows, so this is command line, which makes me queasy and ill. So now what do we do now?
So I'm actually gonna jump to the first thing, which is it's prep for tomorrow. So we mentioned what ports does FileMaker Server use? This will be both
currently 5003.
Yeah, currently 5003. And if you remember back earlier in the stream, we did the SSH, which is the command line that we're going to use tomorrow to get into the server, one. And then 2, I opened both of the web ports. Those will help us later tomorrow for either SSL or WebDirect or this kind of stuff, right? Remote access, but we don't have FileMaker Server available. So we're going to update that right now.
Did you put 5003 already in? I mean,
no.
I was okay.
Nope, I'm talking about it. So we've selected our server. I'm demonstrating this, so it's not clicked by default.
Okay.
Let me clear the filter. So we have one server, none selected. I click into the row. We've selected it. So now all the little detail stuff comes in here. So security. This is, again, security group is firewall. That's what they call them. So we're going to scroll down. And our perfect name of Launch Wizard 3. Let's rename that, actually. Can I rename that? How do I rename it?
That's right.
Amazon's torturing me. I'm sorry. I'm going to go to the list here. Launch Wizard 3. Can I rename the...
I saw like the little like pen thing if you hovered over the thing in Well, no, never mind.
Yeah, no, because I can name this, which is the actual, that's actually
Okay.
technically tagging it.
Okay.
Amazon sometimes. Anyway, whatever, it doesn't matter. I
Okay.
just wish it had a better name. So this is a detail view for the, so I'm gonna go back, hold on, start over. So overview, we now have an instance running. This will be the thing that you click most of the time.
This
You
is
see
our
it is
server.
filtered.
There's our,
So if you have any that are off, it won't show them.
Okay. Yep.
Yep. So we're going to select our one. We're going to go to security. We're going to scroll down on our tiny screen here. And we're going to do Launch Wizard 3. We're now looking at the detail view of the firewall. Comes with a few things built in. I believe there was a question about configurability and like blocking outgoing stuff. Amazon defaults to everything outgoing is good to go.
Okay.
So if you want to configure that, that's here. I'm not going to demo that, but that's where it is. Inbound, this is key for us. We're going to edit the inbound rules. And now we've got some rule IDs. We're in this little edit interface. And you can see here we got the 2 web ports. This is 443 and 80. And those are 0, whatever /0. That's everything. Everybody gets it. No problem.
Yep.
So we're going to add a rule. You can see me. I'm limited. It's our office IP here in Los Osos. So FileMaker port 5003 is a TCP connection. So we're going to just leave that right where it is. Let me get your columns here. So you have a protocol, that's TCP, perfect, or port range. So we need to fill in 5003.
Okay.
Right. And then you probably want everybody to be accessing it. However, you can limit that one if you want to. Just, I have one client that does that, so it's not a very common request. But we have one client that does a FileMaker server, in the cloud in Amazon, whatever, and everything on it, as far as incoming access, is limited to their office IP because that's the only place they get to it from. If they're off on a conference, they get nothing. That can make certain IT people sleep well at night, or if you have like a corporate VPN that everybody comes out of that IP address or a couple of IP addresses, you can put those on the list basically. So not demoing that here, but it's available to you if you want to do something like that. I'm going to label this one just so everyone's clear. Server, cool.
Okay.
And then we hit save.
Save rules. Okay.
And you got a little thinking, and then boom, that's live. And it is live that fast. It's seconds.
Okay.
Maybe at the high end. So firewalls are good. Got hardware. We talked about hardware pricing.
Canberra asked a question.
Sure.
And so when and where do you assign your own domain name? So I think first we have to do the Elastic IP, which is not Elastic. So we mentioned this yesterday, Elastic IP, it's your static address. So
So one, I can't demo that. It would be difficult to demo that.
We don't have to demo it.
The Elastic I can do, no problem. The DNS part, which is what they're asking, how do I take a domain and point it at my server? So first step, and it doesn't matter where you're doing that. One, you have a domain place. We do GoDaddy or Gandhi, or even Amazon actually does. They have a Route 53 DNS and domain system that you can use also. Google used to have one, like whatever. There's a lot of companies that do that. You'll have your domain, probably your corporate one. You'll pick a subdomain. You'll create an A record. That'll go with an IP address. We're going to get one of those right now. So I'm going to expand this little thing. So we have our panel. We're going to go to Elastic IPs. You can see we have 0 of those. We're going to allocate one. And it's going to come from, and so there's some details here where you can bring your own IPs to Amazon, and we're not going to cover that or deal with it. Amazon has a collection of them. We're going to use one of theirs. That works great. We don't need to tag it or do anything like that right now, so we're just going to allocate it. Boom. Great. Okay, cool. So we have an IP address, but you can see it's not attached to, associated with is the word they use, but it's not attached to anything. So we're going to attach it. We're going to take this IP, which is selected. See, it's selected. Here, let me clear it. So we have, okay. And so we're going to actions. We're going to associate.
Okay.
And because,
go ahead. Well, I was just going to say this is a not a free thing, right? So it's not very much money. It's very trivial in the scheme of things, but it's not entirely free. So
it used to be free. To be clear, we will say ran out of IPv4s previously, and then several years later, people have finally started charging for those, which mostly has just resulted in people finally being efficient with them. That was one of the reasons we ran out, we'll say, as early as we did. I don't say people were being necessarily wasteful, but when something costs you money to maintain versus when it's literally free, like even if the cost is nominal, people will make different decisions.
Yeah, yeah.
They're like $4 a month.
Okay.
It's irrelevant to the overall cost of the server, but it's not zero, and it used to be zero.
So let me explain the Elastic thing because we're doing pretty good here real quick. We can land this. But the idea with Elastic IP, it's a static address, but Amazon, their employees, their engineers call it Elastic because it can travel with your server and travels with you. And so if you move your server from the East Coast or the West Coast, or you move it wherever you're going to move it around their network, that Elastic, it's Elastic because it allows that IP, which is static to you, but elastically can follow the server wherever the server goes within the Amazon uh, infrastructure, shall we say. So it's from Amazon standpoint, they had to program their systems to allow the address to move around. And that made it elastic. From their perspective, it elastically would move around. That's why they call it elastic. It's static to you, but it's,
The thing that I like about them is that and it was like the thing that changed when I realized what was valuable here. The IP address itself is a thing that you can address, right? Like a server is an item, a hard drive or a volume is an item, a firewall entry is an item, and an IP address is an item also. And so you can relocate it between servers, regions. You could launch a new the VPC that we've ignored this whole time is a virtual private cloud. You can launch your own cloud inside of Amazon's cloud. And then you can put one IP in front of that and have 1,000 machines behind that one IP. And there's like, a little gateway thing going on dealing with the details of that, right? And so it's very powerful. We use it for one of its features in the demo. But they're very cool. So I'm gonna clear that out. So
anyway, that's why it's Elastic, everyone. And from Amazon's perspective, they had to make it very GUI and transportable, which made it, from their perspective, Elastic. So anyway.
And so when you come in here, we're associating our IP address to, and you can do a network interface also. If you have multiple network, we're not going to cover that really, but if you have multiple network interfaces on a server, you could have multiple IPs or something. If you just do instance, then you're going to get a list of these and they'll tell you the names. This is why the naming is really helpful. Again, if you have 25 servers in here, it's going to give you all 25 of them and they're running or stopped or whatever status. And you need to know which one is the right one to plug it onto. And if you don't know or you haven't labeled them, you have a problem. So we're just going to do that. We don't need to change any of this stuff. We're going to associate. Perfect. So when we come over here, it says it was successful. We're going to come over here. We see our allocated IP. Let me see. Did I happen to leave one open? No, I did not. Oh, my demo could have been better. That's all right. So if we slide to the right, we now have public IPv4 is also the same and different from what it was when we saw it 10 minutes ago, is now this Elastic IP. So they're both the same, and this is how you'll get into the server at that point. Done. So we have our Elastic, we did our firewall, we did our Elastic IP. The only other thing that we could do is maybe like snapshots or something. And we can do those either now or tomorrow after FileMaker Server.
Well, it's a backup conversation, right? So
it's a backup conversation.
We want to spend probably at least 10, 15 minutes on that. So
the configuration won't be too bad, but we want to talk. The thing that we will address at that point is why it's okay to do this on Linuxes and not Windows, for example.
Because snapshots are interesting. Yes. So because
there's some operating system differences basically that make it feasible here, where it's not. It still has a problem, which is it's the problem of all snapshots everywhere. Virtual servers, on site, doesn't matter. You're using snapshot backups, you have to restore from a backup afterwards, or you have to be using that snapshot where you're pulling a copy out of that image that you took and then putting it wherever it goes. You have to always be doing something like that. You can't use the live file. Do not ever use the live file. Thank you.
Right, which is the whole idea behind that.
That's I gotta get my mic up with my little horn yelling at people like I'm at a protest.
Yeah, absolutely. David Angel says, can you manage a domain name from AWS? Yeah, It's route. You remember the old route across the United States that they got rid of it? It's Route 66, and you can still find it. They call it Route 53 because that was a cute play on it.
It's a cute play. Yeah. We don't have anything in here, but the short answer is yes. You can register a domain, and then there's all kinds of stuff. Once your domain is, we'll say, inside Amazon, you can, like other things, point it fully at Amazon and let them manage it, and like register it at GoDaddy or whatever. But they allow you to register here also. You can do cool stuff. You can, I think 360 Works, we did a demo with them with doing geolocated FileMaker servers, and the Africa continent goes to them, and Asia goes to.
That was the it was the failover, right? The servers.
From between your multiple servers and mirror
five
sync.
servers that would run the same database, and as you edited one, it would replicate the data to the other 5 servers, and when you logged in, it would find you the closest functioning FileMaker server, which was badass.
Was I there for that stream?
This goes back, Margaret, with Jesse Barnum, like
years ago,
solid 3 years ago. So here's the deal. We keep saying, hey, make sure the FileMaker server is close to you. Well, what if you have people using it all around the globe? Well, it's going to be close to some people, but not close to other people. If those people really use it a lot, like they use it all day during the day, you're going to want to have multiple servers. And then you want to set the servers up so the data, if you add or edit the data, it gets replicated, pushed to the other server. So if I add a new record and delete 3 records and whatever, 5 seconds later, that's reflected on the other servers around the globe. That's some badass stuff. That's not normally something that FileMaker would do.
That's like MirrorSync Enterprise. It's back-end database syncing. You can just keep, have all your files on 5 or 8 or 10 or whatever different servers, and then globally distribute those servers. So you
David Angel was not round robin. It was not. It was actually the closest one. Yeah, you'd think it's round robin. It would just find but no, it found the closest server, the closest server that was working. So we would simulate by pulling the plug out of one close to us, and then it would figure out that it was dead, and it would route you to the next closest server. It's one of the most awesome demos I've ever seen.
Are we good?
We're done. It's for 15 over. Tomorrow we're gonna take what we built here. We're gonna install FileMaker Server on it. And then we'll put a copy of Starting Point on there, and we'll let people log on to it. And
sure.
Y'all have a ball. All right, everybody. Thank you for coming. Have a lovely day. Goodbye.